Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Richard Metal Fan Interviews. This is episode number 90, and today's guest we're talking to Ramon Cazares. Ramon is in the band Abolishment of Flesh, a death metal band from Texas. Today we're going to be talking to him about basically what got him into metal, some of his past bands, and pretty much a rundown of Abolishment of Flesh's discography. So, without further ado, let's go talk to Ramon. So what's up, guys? I am here with Ramon from Abolishment of Flesh. How are you doing today, Ramon?
I'm doing great. Just got back from a little mini trip from Mexico. So,
Oh wow. Oh,
yeah.
where what were you doing in Mexico for?
Well, honestly, I live 7 miles away from the border, way down south of Texas. So, my wife had a dentist appointment. So, and we go over there to get medicines and all sorts of stuff. And, also get some great food and drink some cocktails down there.
Wow, that's one of my goals is like go to Mexico. I've never been there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically this format is I want to do a quick rundown of your catalog as well as talk about like your journey as an artist from where you started to now. But before we go into that, what were like the first bands that got you into metal? What made you pretty much want to be in a band?
Wow. So I grew up in a tiny little town called Hale Center, Texas. At the time, there was only like 1,200 people, so I only knew what my sisters and brother-in-law were listening to. And at the time, I didn't understand metal. My brother-in-law was listening to like Ozzy Osbourne and stuff like that, so I didn't understand it. But I was always listening to whatever was on the radio. At the time, pop was really popular. It is nowadays, but I mean back then it was like Madonna, the Bangles, and stuff like that. So I was always listening to stuff like that. But as I got into middle school, um, that's when I started noticing girls, and they were wearing torn jeans and cut off shirts and everything, and I thought they were I was a young kid with hormones everywhere. So I was like, oh, okay, I like to get to know these girls. But they started introducing me to bands and they started giving me cassettes and stuff. And they were like, check out this band. You want to listen to music? Check out Metallica. Check out Ozzy Osbourne. And I started listening to that kind of music. And at the time, there was on Friday nights there used to be a show called Night Tracks, I believe, and they would play Guns N' Roses and stuff like that. So I got into hair metal bands first, but when I saw when Metallica premiered their one video, that's when I really got into the heavier stuff. I was just like, wow, it just blew me away as a little kid, and it just inspired me. I wanted to do everything they're doing. They were just bashing on the drums and slamming away on the guitars and headbanging hair, and it was just heavy and it was intense. And I that's from that point I knew that's what I wanted to do. So
All right, and from what I saw in Metal Archives, your first band was called Disorder, and you all formed in '92. Tell me a little bit about that. There's not really much info about them.
Disorder, my very first band was in middle school. It was called Calavera, and we were a cover band. We covered from Nirvana to uh, uh, death metal stuff, Corrosion Conformity, Cannibal Corpse. But Disorder was my real band, that was actually doing stuff. I posted my, I was looking for a band, so I was like, hey, I'm a guitarist. I can play bass. I can play drums. I'm just looking for a band to join and jam with. So I posted it at a music store, and these dudes hit me up, and they're like, hey, we're in a metal band called Disorder, and we'd like to try you out. So they were a thrash band in the local scene in Amarillo, Texas, and those guys were making a lot of noise before I came in. Unfortunately, the guitar player before I came in, he actually passed away. He was in a really bad car accident,
Oh
and
shit.
that's when they were looking for the second guitar player. And they found me, and I came in, tried out. They liked it, and it all worked out. So
Yeah.
and we started off as a thrash metal band, and then things kind of changed. We kind of stuff happened. There was a lot of stuff that happened. Some band members left, and we ended up changing the band from me and my other guitarist that was in the band. He was into death metal, so we kind of started changing the band over from transitioning from thrash to death metal. And some of the first bands that we were listening to were bands like, well, obviously Death, Disincarnate, and Deeds of Flesh and early Dying Fetus when they first came out. So those were our inspirations. So we started transitioning into more of the death metal, and we changed our name from Disorder to Infliction.
Yeah, and then tell me about that first release under the Infliction name, Trails of Obliteration, because I tried looking it up on like YouTube and stuff, and it's not anywhere. Where I'd love to know more about that album.
Yeah, I believe that album came out on what was the label called? It was a TXTM label. I can't remember right now. I feel bad, but we just printed it ourselves, and we got picked up by a TXTM label, and they were going to put it out, but they kind of never made it out there as a label, so we just kind of just pushed it out there. And I think some European label got it and they re-released it, but it was, a small amount of CDs at the time they came out and they put them out. I still have a couple of the CDs and stuff. I've been wanting to put it up there, but because of the other guys, I can't just, it has to be everybody deciding to put it out there, But I think the
Yeah,
music is there, and I wish it would get put out there, like on Spotify, YouTube, and all that. So
yeah. So it has to be like a unanimous decision.
exactly, and everybody at this point is kind of doing their own thing. So it's kind of hard, and some of us aren't even talking to each other.
Oh shit.
Yeah,
Yeah, but then that second album, Denouncing the Flesh,
denouncing the flesh.
yeah, I love that. I was actually listening
Yeah.
to it earlier. It's just like an ass beater from like beginning to end. And tell me
Well,
about
thank you.
that.
Yeah. That one, another label called Dead World Syndicate out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Joe Hernandez, he's the one that picked that album up and he released it on his small label at the time. It's not around anymore, but yeah, that was our second album, and that was. I still love all those songs. I wish we could maybe re-record them or re-release or something, because I think those songs, a lot of people really dig them if we put them out there.
Yeah. Yeah, and then tell me about how you formed Abolishment of Flesh, because I believe y'all formed in 2006.
2006, kind of loosely. Our first show was actually like a New Year's Eve show, and it was and going into 2007. It was New Year's of 2007. But basically, I left Infliction. I just got married, and it was kind of hard for me to balance the band and marriage. I was struggling from being my immature self and trying to be a grown up, trying to grow up at the same time. So I kind of had to step away from the music and kind of figure things out in my life. But I stepped away from the music, and I was writing at the whole time. I was just writing music, and that's when I decided. I was like, you know what, I think I need to make a band, my own band. With Infliction, I was the guitar player. I had some say in the band. It was, we all had a say in the band, but with Abolishment of Flesh, it's my band, my idea, so I was able to direct that. So at the time of my hiatus, I came up with Abolishment of Flesh, and then 2007 New Year's Eve is when we did our first official show. But 2008 is what I call our official debut as a band.
Yeah, and then I know that same year you released your self-titled debut album. What was like the mind frame going into making that?
Um, Honestly, a lot of that music was kind of music that I already had that was supposed to be with written for Infliction. You can kind of tell if you listen to Denouncing the Flesh and the first Abolishment album, you can kind of see there's a lot of um, similarities, with the riffs. Obviously, I wrote both albums, most of Denouncing the Flesh, but yeah, those were all leftover riffs that I had for Infliction, but I made them into full songs, and I had enough music to put out an album, so
Yeah.
did. And it was just all the built up frustration because it was a very emotional time because I didn't want to leave Infliction, but I had to in order for me to grow. And when I left, it was just all building up. And when I released Abolishment of Flesh, it felt like it was just a release.
Yeah, and I know next year is going to be 15-year anniversary of that. Well, that do you have like a different viewpoint about it now as opposed to when you put it out back in '08?
As far as the music and the release and stuff, yeah, I mean, I listen to it and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so sloppy. But when I really listen to the music, I'm like, wow, that's some crazy stuff I was writing back in the day. My writing style is totally different from back then to nowadays. I feel like there's more structure, but I kind of like the chaotic form of writing music that I did have back in the day, and I kind of miss it. I don't know. It's just, getting older, I guess, kind of mature, I guess, musically.
Yeah. Yeah, and then in between Self-Titled and Human Condition, you released a Decimation EP in 2012. Was that like something to like hold people over before you started making in Human Condition?
Well, we had a tour that we put together, and I believe that was our very first AOF tour. I think we toured with Sean Whitaker at the time. I don't think it was Sean Whitaker. I think it was in Insidious Discrepancy. So I was like, we need to have something out there, some material to promote out there. We already had the music, so when we recorded that EP, obviously you can listen to it and like, but we recorded it in one night, and we hurried up and packaged it and everything. We went on tour. So it was a rushed product, but it was music that we had at the time. So basically that's what it was. It was kind of like what you were saying, kind of to hold people over. It was kind of us
Yeah.
having some sort of product to present to people while we were on the road at the time.
Yeah, and I would consider like whenever a band like releases an EP, I would consider it kind of like making a video game reference, a side quest, so to speak.
Yeah.
But yeah, but then going into Inhuman Condition, usually with the debut album, you have your entire life to write it, and then there's a lot of little bit of hype going into the debut. But when the sophomore album came in Human Condition, did you feel like pressure to follow up the self-titled in a way?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, I think whatever we release, it should be better than the last product that we put out. But at the same time, it was already music that was already coming out. It was just coming out. You know what I mean? And we're writing it. Um, and it seems like even right now we have an EP that's fixing to come out next year. It's a lot of the music is leftover music from the past. You know what I mean? And that's how kind of how Inhuman Condition was. It was just a lot of leftover music, but we also redid songs that were on the Decimation EP and songs that we had in the past that we just went ahead and recorded. So it was just a combination of everything. But overall, I think it was pretty good. A lot of people loved it. It still has that raw feeling to it, and the raw sound to it. And people really like that.
Yeah, and I noticed you really take your time because I know self-titled came out in '08, and of course Inhuman Condition in 2018. So there was like 10-year gaps. I was curious, do you ever try to like it's hard to describe, do you ever I was wondering why it takes so long between each album, between the first two?
Well, unfortunately, what happens is I've had a hard time keeping band members.
Yeah.
I lived in Amarillo. I don't live in Amarillo anymore, but I've been bringing in members, and it's just been a revolving door, and it's been hard to keep, especially drummers. And that's the reason why I'm playing the drums for the band right now, because it's been really hard to find a drummer that is willing to sit down and commit to the band. Um, so really, that's what's been setting us back as band members, but also before in Human Condition. My son, 2014, he was diagnosed with a brain tumor. So that
Damn.
kind of, for a couple of years, it kind of put life in pause. You know what I mean? So, so there's things like that. I have two kids with my wife, but then we adopted four other children. I brought them up, as my own kids, and then I had one kid that came out having a brain tumor. So it's just family life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why with Infliction I left the band, so I can figure out how to make this all work, how to juggle it all. And with the Abolishment of Flesh, me being the person that oversees everything, this is my band and everything, I can also put things on pause and it's not going to hurt anybody because it's like right now life is happening. We're going to have to kind of slow
Right.
things down right now.
Right.
So,
Can't
and that's
argue
why
about
there's a
that.
gap. Yeah, yeah. And that's basically what it is band members and just life happening.
Yeah. But then,
But luckily, we're still going at it, you know what I mean? Slowly but surely, we're still here.
yeah, I know. No, last year you put out "In the Presence of Darkness." Like, how's the reception been for that? It's been out now for a little over a year.
We've had a really good reception. My only problem was with Inhuman Condition, that was released on Unholy Anarchy Records. And the guy that owns that record label, he did a really good job doing the PR for that album. For Inhuman Condition, I feel like it didn't get the attention, or at least it wasn't put out there as much as it should have. I thought it sounded the sound quality was better. I thought the songs were more structured, a lot better. But it just didn't get the attention, not because nobody cared about it. It's just it wasn't out there as much. You know what I mean? It was kind of like, here it is. We went on tour. Now move on to the next thing. Unfortunately, there wasn't just enough time to do a lot of PR on it.
Right. Right. And to kind of like wrapping things up, what's next for Abolishment of Flesh in terms of like new music and tours and stuff?
Well, right now we have an EP that we're working on. Most of the music is written, except for not written, but recorded, except for one song, which I'm going to wait after the holidays. So we're going to put out a 4-song EP, and then we're hopefully going to put a few videos out for that, and then do maybe a small tour for that, and then eventually do a full-length album for that. We're going to be shopping for labels and stuff like that. We're always, talking to labels, shopping our music and stuff like that. But for right now, for 2023, we have an EP coming out, 4-song EP called Resurrecting Misanthropy. So, that's what we're looking for right now. That's what we're pushing for.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Ramon. So everybody, Ramon from Abolishment of Flesh.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.